Most people have heard of Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist, ardent atheist, and author. He is an extremely vocal critic of religion and said, "It is absolutely safe to say that if you meet somebody who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane." Is Dawkins right? Is it true that some of the best minds all over the world who happen to be believers in religion, are they ignorant, stupid, or insane? Am I too ignorant, stupid, or insane? In this video, we're going to analyze 5 quotes made by Richard Dawkins and see that evolution is not a clear-cut fact or irrefutable truth as he makes out. So Richard Dawkins has made a name for himself in the field of evolutionary biology, but what catapulted him into the mainstream is his fervent negative criticism against religion. I must confess, he has made some rousing, emotional speeches, but the question is the heart of what he's saying that evolution is a fact, an undeniable fact, is that really true? Richard Dawkins has said on several occasions that he is philosophically committed to naturalism. Meaning, of course, that if he's philosophically committed to naturalism, any supernatural explanation should be discarded. Watch the following video.
What would it take for you to believe in God?
Well, I used to say it would be very simple. It would be the second coming of Jesus, or a great big, deep, booming bass Paul Robeson voice saying, "I am God and I created." But I was persuaded mostly by actually Steve Zara, who's a regular contributor to my website, richarddawkins.net. He more or less persuaded me that even if there was this booming voice and the second coming in clouds of glory, the more probable explanation is that it's a hallucination or a conjuring trick by David Copperfield or something. He made the point that a supernatural explanation for anything is incoherent, that it just doesn't it doesn't add up to an explanation for anything.
So what would persuade you?
Well, I'm starting to think nothing would, which in a way goes against the grain, because I've always paid lip service to the view that a scientist should change his mind when evidence is forthcoming. The trouble is, I can't think what that evidence would look like.
Did you catch what Dawkins said? When he was asked what would persuade him to believe in God, he said that the way he's thinking now, ultimately nothing would. But then he admits this goes against the grain, because he's always paid lip service to the idea that academics and scientists should always be prepared to change their mind in light of the evidence. But if somebody has a presupposition, and that presupposition precludes or excludes a certain idea, then is that really logical and rational? He also came to believe that belief in the supernatural is incoherent. Now let's keep that in mind as we analyze the 5 quotes. The first quote we're going to look at is from the book The Blind Watchmaker that Dawkins wrote. He says, "Biology is the study of complicated things that have the appearance of having been designed with a purpose." I would agree that biology is indeed complicated and even somewhat complex, especially the biomechanics and the human eye. But we should ask the question, is it irrational or illogical, based on what Dawkins said, that biology is complicated and it seems to be designed with purpose? Is it illogical to then reach the conclusion that there is a divine mind, a supernatural creator behind this? I don't think it is. Now, he may not want it to be true. Now, he's already said that he's committed to naturalism. So therefore, the presupposition is that God or supernatural cannot be part of the explanation. Is that logical? If there is no supernatural, if everything can be explained by natural causes, then think about it. How do we have complex biological organisms with fully functioning parts? We have the biomechanics, we have the human eye, we have all of the systems we have in our bodies and all the in animals and plant life. How did they get to be so complex? How did they have the appearance, so he says, the appearance of design and purpose, when in fact there isn't? The second quote we're going to look at is in his book, River Out of Eden. He says, "The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference." But wait a minute, didn't Dawkins just say that biology is complicated and it seems that there is purpose and design? But this quote, he's saying that there is no design and is no purpose. There seems to be something of an imbalance here. On the one hand, he's saying, well, actually there does really seem to be purpose and design, but on the other hand, he's saying, but there isn't any purpose and design. That seems to be a bit of an inconsistency in Dawkins and many atheists' thinking. Perhaps the only thing stopping Dawkins from at least considering the plausible explanation of a supernatural being behind such complexity. But of course, if you're already philosophically committed to naturalism, that cannot happen. The third quote we're going to look at by Dawkins is from The Scotsman on April the 9th, 2005. It says, "The fact that life evolved out of nearly nothing, some 10 billion years after the universe evolved out of literally nothing, is a fact so staggering that I would be mad to attempt words to do it justice." Dawkins rightly points out that it's staggering to believe that life appeared out of virtually nothing and the universe appeared out of literally nothing. You would be mad to think that's the case, hence the irony. But no, Dawkins doesn't seem to think such an illogical, perhaps even irrational, inconsistent idea makes sense. So from Dawkins' perspective, the cause of the universe and everything in it, even how life began and how the whole universe started, we cannot consider the supernatural because that would go against our commitment to naturalism. Now, again, is that logical or is that a little bit mad? Diving into the fourth quote, Dawkins said, "I'm fascinated by the idea that genetics is digital. A gene is a long sequence of coded letters like computer information. Modern biology is becoming very much a branch of information technology. I'm fascinated by the idea that genetics is digital, just like Dawkins, but I'm also curious to know why or how genetics is digital. What can account for genetics being digital? Can evolutionary processes account for this? Or is it more plausible that a mind is behind this digitalization of genetics? Let's look at DNA. It's an extremely complex program. Now, programs require coding, but programs also require, in fact, they necessitate storage, instructions, and information. I want to dwell on that. Instructions, information, and storage. If evolution is true, how can it account for information, for instructions, and for storage within the program of DNA? I don't think it can. We know intuitively that minds are behind programs. Why would it be any different with the amazing digital program called DNA that's in our bodies? Perhaps Dawkins is mad to believe that natural causes can result in information, instructions, and storage. Dawkins was inevitably influenced to some extent by the late evolutionary biologist Richard Lewontin, who lived from 1921 and passed away in 2021. He said, "Our willingness to accept scientific claims that are against common sense is the key to an understanding of the real struggle between science and the supernatural. We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just-so stories, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism. It is not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but, on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. Moreover, that materialism is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door." And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, the irrationality of many atheists. Not all, but many atheists approach the topic with an a priori commitment to naturalism. And as Richard Lewontin, I think, very honestly said, which I respect him for, he said, "We don't want a divine foot in the door." In other words, it's not really that the evidence points away from God. It's that we don't want God to exist, and therefore we take the naturalist route. So that brings us to the fifth and final quote by Richard Dawkins. He said, "I accept that there may be things far grander and more incomprehensible than we can possibly imagine." I agree with Dawkins on this point as well. There are far grander and more incomprehensible things we don't know about the universe. But why does this necessarily disclude the supernatural? To conclude, despite Dawkins's great rhetoric skills and passion, he has inconsistency in his beliefs and opinions. On the one hand, he wishes to portray himself as a person who is an intelligent, rational thinker and who can debunk God based on a vast array of evidence. But on the other hand, he is already philosophically committed to naturalism, thereby not even allowing the supernatural explanation, even if it is the most logical, most plausible explanation in light of the data. Perhaps this is because one cannot let a divine foot in the door. Perhaps it's Dawkins who's ignorant, stupid, or insane. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, like the video, and share the video. And remember, faith is not fairy tales, and God is real.